Hi folks, Alex here from alexanderguestguitars.com. Today I just wanted to talk to you about sanding a bit. When building things out of wood, we all need to be able to sand the wood down effectively in order to achieve the desired finish in the wood, and for this we often use sanding blocks, sort of like this one. And as you can see, this is just a simple block of wood about 4 to 6 inches long that you can wrap some sandpaper around so you can sand the wood effectively. Now sometimes, like when I was a cabinet making student, the standard form of sanding block had a layer of cork on the bottom, like this one. Sometimes the block is made from cork itself, so it's a solid block of cork, and sometimes you can buy sanding blocks with clips and clamps and all sorts of weird shapes and scoops and scallops and whatever it is built into them, so you can hold onto the paper, onto the block more easily. But I think these type of sanding blocks are actually not very good at doing their job. Firstly, the paper is sometimes difficult to hold on to when you're trying to rub it up and down onto a piece of wood. Now I'm sort of exaggerating the point at the moment, but you get that kind of effect where the sandpaper wants to slip off the block. And this is especially true with people who are new to woodworking and therefore new to sanding. So it's not ideal. You know, it's perfectly easy to get round and to learn how to use the sanding block, but it's not ideal. And secondly, if you're trying to be accurate with your sanding and you're trying to get a specific shape into a piece of wood with the sandpaper on the block, what tends to happen is the sandpaper will roll the edges of the shape that you're trying to get, because the paper is not properly held on to the sanding block, and you get this what I call flap on the sanding block, because you're only holding it on with the pressure of your finger pushing it down onto the block. So if that's not sufficient, you'll get that, and as you're sanding, it will tend to roll these edges over in the most horrible way, and you'll end up with a cushion effect almost. And thirdly, I don't know why people insist on putting soft pads on the bottom of sanding blocks, like the cork on the bottom of this one, because what I've always found throughout my career is that when you're sanding, the more rigid the backing of your sandpaper, the better it will cut. So having a soft pad on the front of the sanding block defeats the purpose that you're trying to use it for. You know, if you've got a piece of sandpaper with a relatively soft backing to it, you'll get a softer cut than if you've got something like aluminium oxide, which has got quite a thick, almost cardy backing to it. It will cut much more effectively. So I don't use these at all, and I've developed a different kind of sanding block which answers these shortcomings and enhances the functionality and usability of the sanding block. And here is one of my sanding blocks. I call it a dovetail block. Now you'll notice that it's just a simple block of wood, just like the traditional sanding block, but the sides have a 10 to 15 degree angle cut on them. 10 works okay. These are 15, that's about the best angle. And you can make them in a variety of ways. This one's just put on the saw and just planed off, sanded off, whatever. It doesn't matter if the angles match each other exactly, or whether they're specifically any type of degree, 10 degrees or 15 degrees, 12, whatever. It doesn't really matter. So it's just so that it looks like this, like a dovetail, like a wide dovetail in section. Now this is not to make the sanding block easier to hold, with the narrow face at the bottom and the wide face at the top, giving you a ridge to hold on to. It's not like this, because the block works in a different way. It works the other way around. Now you might find this counterintuitive, because when you're trying to pick it up off a bench, it might slip out of your hands and you think, well, how are you meant to hold on to that? But of course, if you wrap sandpaper around it of any grit, what you'll notice is that that has masses and masses of grip to it. Now, the way that this works really is, I'll just put that onto there, but when you assemble the sandpaper to the block, what I tend to find is that if you take it off and fold at these ridges, you can fold it, if it's that wide you can fold them at the top. It doesn't, these ones don't really matter, but certainly these two at the bottom, these folds here are all important. And then once you've done that, you can assemble that back onto the sanding block, and the sandpaper will magically hold itself to the sanding block. And as you can see, it's flat. It's completely flat to the bottom. So when you're sanding a piece of wood, it will hold itself, the paper will hold itself onto the block, and it's much easier with much less effort to hold the sandpaper to the block while you're sanding if you have these angles and this these folds here holding the sandpaper to the block. And because it's flat, you can be absolutely precise with your sanding, getting absolutely every single last little shape that you want. You can angle it, you can do rounding, anything that you want, and it's dead accurate. What you have in your mind as the shape that you want, it will go onto the wood without any of the fudging and the kind of puffiness that you get with a traditional sandpaper. So the other thing about this dovetail block that I find really excellent is the fact that you can do this with a normal standard sanding block, but it tends to not work very well. But what you can do is put this in the vise, and because of the angles on the sides, as you tighten up the vise, it will actually tighten up the paper, and this is now dead flat and it's held dead flat, so it's almost like a stone. You can change the paper on it as much as you like, refresh it as much as you like, and it's just like a stone. And then you can pick up a piece of wood, sand it as much as you like. You can do the ends. I do all my brass nuts, top nuts with this method. I file it to shape, and then I finish it off using this method, just holding the little block like that, going up and down. It's perfect for that. You can do that. You can do whatever you want. So I find that this dovetail block is much more effective and easier to use than the traditional rectangular block, and they're just as easy and quick to make with scrap pieces of wood. And I don't know why no one has thought of this before, but now you know, and I hope it will help you in your woodworking. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks for listening, folks. So please check out the website alexanderguestguitars.com, and if you want to, like and post a comment. I'd love to hear them. Okay, cheers, thanks, bye.